This is a conversation with Roshi Robert Althouse. Hi, Robert.
Hi. Hi.
Something about your unconventional approach to teaching Zen.
Yeah, so I, about a year ago, right around the time the economy was tanking, I began to feel that I had been doing traditional Zen practice for many, many years, and it was always a small number of people, and our Sangha community didn't feel as vital as I felt it could be, and so I started rethinking everything about Zen, and I made some pretty radical changes and took out much of the formality of Zen practice and quite a bit of the ritual, and attempted to translate Zen. I have been ever since trying to translate the Zen tradition into a Western context. So what I talk a lot about is living a Zen-inspired life of openness, empathy, and clarity. I don't use any big Buddhist words, and I genuinely feel that Zen is a proactive spiritual path that is universal. It is accessible to anyone regardless of their religion or culture or upbringing.
Yeah, so that sense of living a Zen life. A
Zen-inspired life, I would say.
Yeah.
That anyone can live a Zen-inspired life, again, regardless of religion or culture. And I ground these teachings in mindfulness meditation or mindfulness awareness, and I again draw mostly on neuroscience and psychology, Western philosophy, because I'm a Westerner, and that's what's most familiar to me.
Yeah, so neuroscience, and so, just let's talk a little bit about that in terms of, mindfulness, fear, or heritage.
Well, neuroscience has come a long way in 10 years. It's really quite extraordinary what they're doing now in neuroscience, and there are many people writing about it, and quite a few making connections between findings in neuroscience and mindfulness awareness, and so it just seems like a natural connection to make between meditation and neuroscience. And we were talking earlier before we started this recording. I was mentioning how much I like your new website and the kind of sense of proactive and positive outlook you have. There are people like Rick Hansen that comes to mind that has a lot of emphasis along those lines as well, and who's a neuroscientist. I think he wrote Buddha's Brain or something like that. But anyway, the one thing that came up for me when I was thinking about this is that the way we're constructed as human beings is we are constructed from an evolutionary point of view to have a negative bias, and that's we have the amygdala. I always mispronounce that. Amygdala, so kind of a tongue twister.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
We have that part, that small little piece in the limbic area of the brain that is really specialized for noting danger and threat, and that's what its main job is, to alert us to threats in the environment. And that actually has, again, from an evolutionary point of view, that has served us very well, because we cannot actually afford to make mistakes when there's a serious danger in the environment, or we wouldn't survive and propagate the species. So that's actually a very important property of our brains. But at the same time, I think it's important to appreciate that it gives us a negative bias when we look at the world. We're more likely to give weight to our negative judgments, our fears, our anxieties, than we are to a positive interpretation of events.
So I want to maybe just slow down on this and stay there because as you say it, it flows in the conversation in a way that feels very natural.
Yeah.
But in a way, just stopping to make sense of how powerful what you said is.
Yeah.
That, we think of negative as bad, and so in a way, strange of how we could have so much power for what is negative. It seems weird. But what you're saying is negative is actually, that negative thinking is actually something that's a very powerful force that helped us survive and be where we are today as a species.
It's built into us biologically for survival. So that negative bias is, you're absolutely right. I think it's very important that it's there.
So the negative thinking, the critical, that self-negative stuff, all of this comes from that basic urge to notice something that is dangerous and pay a lot of attention to it to not get burned by it.
Yeah, so I would say there's one way to maybe talk about this is that we have a biological basis to our experience, which is it's always there, and the difference between humans and other animals who also have that same biological alert mechanism in their brains is that we also have some mind or consciousness that allows us to reflect on that. And I think that's also extremely powerful, that we are able to take this experience that we have that is happening at a biological level, which is helping us survive, and then reflect on it and be able to put it in a more accurate context.
So we have that ability to override that basic mechanism of fear.
I actually think we do, yes. We can modulate the fear, and we can. I think everything has to do with context, doesn't it? I mean, if there's a saber-toothed tiger next to me, that's one context. But if I'm just ruminating about the economy and feeling anxious this morning because I heard a story on NPR, that's another context. Very different context.
So
another way of saying that, I think, there's a lot of ways we could approach this, but another way of saying it is, I think we tend to give a lot of weight to things that we have very little control over in terms of our thought process, where our thoughts go. So I could spend the whole morning obsessing about our bad economy in America and have a miserable morning, but I don't have much control over that. So in terms of what I would call living a Zen-inspired life or being proactive is, I think, what makes a Zen-inspired life a more effective lifestyle is that we're spending more of our time and our energy on things that we do have control over. Our circle of influence, as Stephen Covey would put it, we actually have more leverage by paying attention to the spheres of influence around us, our friends, our community, people that we can have an effect over.
Yeah. So that possibility of actually switching, we get the information, the danger signal, but we then have the ability to interpret it.
Yes, so I think understanding our nature, our basic nature, is very important, and then understanding the power of our ability to be mindful in the face of those reactive tendencies that are coming up in us. So
you set up the notion of mindfulness and of proactive in a very different tone from, say, the moralistic tone that sometimes can be used about it, that, one is good, but essentially you say that the reactive tendency is very useful for survival. However, there is also a useful mechanism to override it in order to make a choice and, in a way, analyze intelligence before acting on it.
Yes, I think so. Yes, if we're just reactive, things don't go very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this brings us just to focusing, actually. I use focusing in my teaching quite a bit. I find that there are a lot of people that come to me do not seem to, they discount the body in a way that focusing helps people not do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just so disembodied in this culture and fragmented in so many ways that when people, I think using mindfulness and focusing together is a very useful partnership in which you can begin to trust the wisdom of the body and find that there's something there, a very deep, intuitive kind of knowing that is people just aren't used to. They don't know how to do it. They don't trust it. They don't listen to their bodies in that way. So I think I guess the way to put this in terms of being reactive is that when we're in when we get triggered and we're in a reactive place that's fearful or anxious, we tend to, what I think they call in psychology is we're flooded for a certain period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Very interestingly, men tend to be flooded for a longer period of time than women. And I think that might be, in terms of evolution, again, is that men had to fight or kind of gear up for something, whereas women had to kind of hold it together and protect the family or something.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, there is this, we are triggered, and when we're triggered, we're flooded, and we're in a place that is sort of hyper-vigilant, which is useful, again, from a, evolutionary point of view. We need to, we're in that place of being hyper-vigilant to deal with danger. On the other hand, if we're being triggered all the time during the day by thoughts of the economy or whatever it might be, then we're in a place that is creating a lot of stress. And I think what mindfulness and focusing helps one learn to do is you notice that instead of spinning out in your head, worrying about that threat, is you find where it is in the body. What is that anxiety in the body?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you do that, you short circuit that amount of time that you're flooded.
Yeah. So very
interesting to know.
Very concrete, very practical.
Very
in
practical.
a way, definition of mindfulness and purpose of mindfulness is noticing how we function as a mechanism, as our biological tendencies, and developing a practice that allows us to override that being flooded.
Yeah, so I think there is obviously the practice of mindful meditation, which is very important because you can strengthen this ability to be mindful. But I think the other point that's really important for people to appreciate is that mindfulness is simply a shift of awareness. It can happen in a moment. You can do it anywhere. You can do it on a bus bench. You can do it riding in a car, driving to work in the car. You can do it anywhere. It's simply a shift of awareness that allows you to have the ability to reflect on your experience rather than to be caught in it.
Yeah. So very beautiful, a shift in awareness that's about the ability to reflect on your experience as opposed to being caught in it.
Yes, or the other way I would say that is to have a relationship with your experience that allows you to keep company with yourself.
Yeah, so have a relationship with your experience. Keep company with yourself.
So when we talk about being flooded, and instead of going with the sort of the thoughts the ruminating thoughts and worrying and anxiety, we kind of come back to the body as a way of keeping company with ourselves. And I think that's very much what mindfulness is about as an awareness. It's an embodied awareness.
Yeah. So an embodied awareness. We're not just thoughts. These are not just, abstractions, but it's happening here and now in your body.
Yes, but what's also important, I think, to appreciate is that we're not getting rid of thoughts. Many people have this misunderstanding about meditation, and it's even in mindfulness, that it somehow means that you're going to get rid of your thoughts, which I think is when people have that expectation of meditation, they quickly get discouraged because obviously they're thinking, and we're always thinking thoughts, and meditation is not about not thinking, it's about how to think from the body. So I think Eugene would say it. And I love Eugene's work, especially his latest stuff. So I think the point here is to have a relationship to thought. You're not where you can be mindful about thinking itself. Instead of being caught in the content of your thought, you could actually have a relationship to how you think, which would then be very useful.
Yeah. So caught in the content of your thoughts, in a way, is really essentially be in a reactive mode. You have no control about it. You disappear into the reaction. And have a relationship with it. There's something more. There's a room for actually this kind of a larger container where, you have that reaction, you have that experience, and you have room for relationship with it.
That's right. And a really interesting thing to me about that is that when you are in that place that's reactive, you really cannot keep company with yourself in this way that I'm talking about. And I think that keeping company with oneself, or attuning to oneself, or however you want to put it, is the most loving thing we can do. And we just don't do it enough. I think there's a busyness in the culture, and we're manic, we're driven, we're fragmented, we're multitasking, and I find that a lot of people have a real fear about being still or being just slowing down. So I think you can almost say we're addicted to the speed of the technology. And I think that becomes a real distraction from keeping company with ourselves in this way.
Yeah. So what I'm noticing is you describe this as paying attention to ourselves, that slowing down, so that instead of, in a way, reaching some kind of a special state or, having to achieve something, you're describing something that's a gateway to having a little increased curiosity about...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we are really caught in abstractions about who we think we are, and I think where Zen practice takes you, or mindfulness practice takes you in the direction of, is beginning to appreciate yourself as a verb. That life is a constant process of unfolding, and something is always emerging in the moment, and I think it's the nature of mindfulness to put us in touch with that, the intimacy of that unfolding moment by moment, and that's what begins to open our curiosity about the the wonder and the mystery of this moment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so, just in a way, that sense of curiosity about what's happening right now in your body.
Yes. Again, if we just come back to this notion of abstractions, we tend to settle for generalities and if I'm again, to just ground this in things that are practical, if I'm feeling depressed,
Mm-hmm.
if I wake up in the morning and I have a hard time getting out of bed, and I'm thinking about going to work, and the thought occurs to me, I'm depressed today. I've been depressed for the last 2 weeks, but if that's my thought, and then I've settled for an abstraction that is kind of monolithic state of being depressed, which has no curiosity and no differentiation. But if I know how to approach that this experience that I'm labeling as depression and begin to get curious about what are the parts of it, well, now I'm starting to differentiate it, and it's not quite as solid as it was before. Now I can actually start to notice that, well, in what I'm calling depression, I have some sadness, but I also have a feeling tone of anger is taking place, and I'm feeling, there could be a whole range of textures of emotion if I was willing to approach this from a more mindful place, and I think that could actually free me from that the weight of what I think of as depression.
Yeah. So when you describe it this way, what it evokes for me is, say, to take a metaphor, something like what would be in a mystery, something that the police characterizes as case closed. And then the investigator comes back and pays attention to, a few clues and reopens, and then suddenly there is a possibility of discovery of something new.
Yes. So the detective has the ability to sort of, if a lot of these kind of mystery stories, we can appreciate that the detective has the ability to sort of think outside the box.
Yes.
Yes, which again I think is a mindful quality. One of the writers I really enjoy is Ellen Langer, who's written really wonderfully about mindfulness and coined the term mindful learning.
Mm-hmm.
And she studied children in classrooms and discovered that and she used this term mindful learning to describe this experience of learning where instead of presenting information in a very certain, in an absolute way, as an absolute fact, you present it in a way that's ambiguous, so that now it's not clear what the actual information is presented in a way where it's not certain that it could be just one thing. Now the mind is engaged in that information. And what she found from doing seems to me, rigorous clinical studies in classrooms that she set up was that also there is this aspect of when we're mindful, we're able to create new categories that didn't exist before. We could actually, instead of settling for one assumption that we quickly create closure around or an interpretation, we remain open to the kind of ambiguity and uncertainty of the moment as it's unfolding, and that allows us to actually be very creative and curious about the whole thing and imagine other scenarios that we hadn't even thought about.
Beautiful.
I think that's the nature of mindfulness. It's always it has to do with novelty because it's about getting out of the ruts where we get stuck.
Yeah, and I really especially like your explanation now in light of the example you gave about waking up in the morning, feeling depressed, And, now we can in a way come back to that example and see how in one case you find quick closure by putting this into a box and saying, this is depressed. And depressed leads to, of course, now I know what it is and I know there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
And then, it's closed. As opposed
Talk about
to...
a death sentence, huh? I mean, that's the negative bias, That's just like taking that negative bias and just multiplying it by 10 and then making it into an abstraction that is so solid that there you could have no curiosity about it at all.
Yeah. And I think what's also interesting is the way you're describing it, the way you're discussing it. It's not an all or nothing. It doesn't mean that, there is this amazing power of the brain to solve absolutely everything by having the right focus and the, quote, mindful attitude about it. But simply the openness to actually going a little further. And there's no guarantee that suddenly magically everything will fall into place. But simply, not getting stuck at that immediate putting things into category.
Yes, we tend to, we get a lot of bad role modeling in the culture. There's a lot of, we see it in politicians and public figures all the time demonstrating their certitude about whatever it is they're talking about, and that's supposed to be, we imagine that has something to do with strength when someone has a strong opinion and they don't waver and they don't admit any mistakes. And I actually think that's a kind of unmindful way of approaching life, that it's much more likely that we're mindful when we're in a place of uncertainty, and there may be more clarity in our uncertainty than in our need for, certitude.
Yeah. So maybe a point there that having that attitude of uncertainty does not mean staying in limbo and doing nothing, and you're a great example of it. I mean, you haven't just stayed in uncertainty, you have created things in your life and taught. So just maybe to make this point.
Yes, I think that's a really important point, Serge, that when you are open and flexible in this way and curious, and this open awareness is it's a kind of letting go into it. It's not a conceptual, it doesn't rely on some conceptual framework. We can open or not, and we can sort of contract or we can open, and when we open, then we are moving in the direction of being more proactive in our life and more effective, because we actually have more leverage and we can see things more clearly. We can see other people and appreciate them in a richer way that allows us to be more skillful in how we communicate and deal with any situation, because mindfulness is always about context. Like, we're really not rehearsing our life. We're living it right now. And if the self is empty, then we're constantly improvising many selves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that feels...
To me, that living a zen-inspired life is really learning to trust that we could be on the spot and open-hearted and not have to calculate every move that we make.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of self-consciousness that comes with being trapped in the self in a way that may not be very helpful.
So being trapped in a stereotyped, in an ossified self, as opposed to being ready to discover many selves that come in interaction with circumstances of the moment. Yes,
and Dan Siegel talks about this beautifully, and others do as well, that we really are social beings, and I've always been amazed in focusing how it seems easier to focus in a partnership than it is by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always amazed by how relational focusing is, and yet it's an activity of going, an internal knowing that you do by going and finding the felt sense in your own body, but actually it seems to be more accessible through partnering with somebody else.
Yes, and that's where we go with the relational brain and how.
Absolutely.
Yes.
They're so relational, and so I think that's a big part of opening, is that we begin to have access to our relational self in a way that makes our interpersonal life richer, and we have a better quality of relationship with other people. We're able to be more intimate and more present.
Yeah, so very different from, in a way, that sense that meditation is something that fosters a sense of being self-involved.
Yes, or the idea that Zen is to have some special experience once and for all, I'm going to get it. Or even, samadhi is a wonderful, various states of absorption can be had through meditation, but it's not the end of Zen practice by any means, and people easily get stuck in some even an experience of an absorption or some wonderful blissful experience that they then think this is it.
Right. And this is not it. It is actually too more.
No, there is it, but it's always changing, isn't it?
Yes.
The minute I say this is it and try to stop it, then there's sort of a problem.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to this notion of being proactive. I was reading your website and I think you don't say this, but I was wondering how, because I think in the culture there's a lot of emphasis on the power of positive thinking, and I've always had a bit of trouble with that.
Oh, I do too. I mean, I have an article someplace that says the positive power of negative thinking or something of that nature.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have a tremendous distaste for standardized positive thinking and trying to force the positive view on things.
Yes. It seems very, what's the word? Repressive almost.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like a totalitarian enforced jollity.
Exactly. You're
So
going to impose on yourself a positive experience when you might be having a negative one, which just goes back to what we said about the positive, about being reactive. If you're in a reactive mode, the way you practice with it is acknowledging that that's where you're at right now, instead of trying to say, oh, I shouldn't be here, or I shouldn't be reactive because I'm a Zen student and I practice mindfulness, so we're not supposed to be reactive. That's not the
right. But and even that, in a way, to not put reactive in the place of the bad guy, because as you pointed out, it has tremendous value.
Yeah.
It's not that it's bad. It's just that actually proactive is just incorporating the reactive and, just in a way adding an extra loop.
I think it applies to any emotion or any experience that we think of as negative. It can be transmuted or transformed into wisdom by how we work with it. So I think anger is probably maybe the most destructive emotion that we human beings can experience, and it can cause an enormous amount of pain and suffering when we act it out. But at the same time, there's an intelligence in our anger. When anger arises, it might be because something in a situation that we're involved with is out of balance.
Yeah.
There's some boundary violation, and that anger is a valid reaction to that. But then it's how do we reflect on that reactive anger that's coming up in us that makes a difference between how it gets transformed either into a wisdom or it becomes a poison.
Yeah, and I want to underline how, in a way, just what you just said is an example of what you said earlier, about that sense of mindfulness being a relationship with oneself, of observing, so in that case, observing that difficult emotion of anger, and through that observation, making room for it, having that relationship with the emotion and oneself, the possibility of transforming it. So again, that sense of relation, observation, and process and transformation.
Yes, they have some of the mindfulness teachers have a wonderful an acronym that I like. They call it RAIN. I think Tara Brach talks about this. And RAIN stands for 4 steps. The R is recognize the experience. So if we were to use this in the context of anger, you first have to. A lot of people are in denial of anger.
Mm-hmm.
So people can become very, passive aggressive, and you never know where they're coming from, and they don't either. But so if you recognize, it's important to first recognize what is actually taking place. So I think, again, focusing is very useful, is to go in and find what is actually happening and be able to open to that. And then the A stands for, I believe A stands for acknowledging it. So instead of pushing it away, there's a further opening to it and sort of owning it as your own experience. And then the I stands for investigate, which I think would have something to do with that kind of curiosity you were talking about earlier, is that you begin to actually get curious about the texture of it. It's not monolithic at all. Anger is not monolithic. There's usually sadness underneath it, or fear, or various other emotional tones. And then the N stands for not identifying. So again, I think that's what helps us begin to have a relationship with that experience, which could be very negative, but ends up being quite rich when we know how to hold it in a way that doesn't solidify it.
Yeah. So recognize these various steps in the relationship with what happens.
Yeah, I think mindfulness is great because it's so concrete and specific. So you can really break things down this way to it makes more sense than to try to just generalize about our experience.
Yeah. So maybe it seems like a possible way to conclude this conversation would be to encourage people to think in terms of curiosity, discovery, experimentation.
Oh yes, sure. Yeah, I think just being open. We can. The nature of our minds is open as it is, and when we touch the root of that in ourselves, then I think we're naturally curious.
Yeah. So in a way, not even to force curiosity, but to be open to that curiosity that we naturally have.
Yes, I think it actually arises in an organic way when we're being open in this, when we're just really trusting who we really are. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe in a way, it's being aware that when we're not curious, it's a symptom, it's a signal that something is disrupting our natural flow.
Absolutely. I think it's very useful exercise to notice where we are, where Dan Siegel would say, where we get rigid, or where we get chaotic. Either place where we're not is a place where we're not integrated. So it's a useful question to ask of yourself what areas of my life are chaotic, or what areas of my life are rigid, and most likely you'd find that in both of those areas you are not particularly curious. So what would happen if you were to bring curiosity to either one of those areas in your life? Yeah.
Thanks, Robert.
This is part of the Active Pause podcast at activepause.com.
The nature of our minds is open as it is, and when we touch the root of that in ourselves, then I think we're naturally curious.
Yeah. So in a way, not even to force curiosity, but to be open to that curiosity that we naturally have.
Yes, I think it actually arises in an organic way when we're being open in this, when we're just really trusting who we really are. Yeah.
So maybe in a way, it's being aware that when we're not curious, it's a symptom, it's a signal that something is disrupting our natural flow.
Absolutely. I think it's very useful exercise to notice where we are, where Dan Siegel would say, where we get rigid, or where we get chaotic. Either place where we're not is a place where we're not integrated. So it's a useful question to ask of yourself what areas of my life are chaotic, or what areas of my life are rigid, and most likely you'd find that in both of those areas you are not particularly curious. So what would happen if you were to bring curiosity to either one of those areas in your life? Yeah.
Thanks, Robert.
This is part of the Active Pause podcast at activepause.com.